Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're diving into the real nuts and bolts of digital advertising. We're talking about programmatic tech and the data, well, the data that makes it all tick.
That's right. We have this source document that lays out the key pieces, the components of this whole ecosystem.
And our mission really is to unpack that, not just list definitions, but figure out how these bits and pieces actually work together. What does it mean for how you see ads, how you experience the web?
Yeah, it's easy to just see an ad pop up and not think much about it, right?
Okay.
But there's this incredibly complex, super fast process humming away underneath. And understanding the tech, the data types, that's really the key to getting what's happening behind the curtain.
Exactly. It's like looking at the plumbing, isn't it? The stuff
Yeah.
that makes so much online content possible, or at least funded. Okay, let's unpack this then.
Where should we start?
Let's start with the core idea from the source. Programmatic advertising is basically the automated buying and selling of ad space.
Right. It's a shift from, phone calls and negotiations to machines, tech, and lots of data.
So who are the main tech players here? The source identifies a few key ones. Think of them as the infrastructure.
Definitely.
First up is the ad exchange. How does our source explain that? What's its job in this whole setup?
It calls it the online marketplace. Think of it like a digital auction house. That's where the buyers meet the sellers.
Okay.
And the key thing the source points out is that prices aren't fixed. They're set by bidding, real-time bidding. So it's technology and data doing the work, not like the old ways.
Right, so the exchange is the auction floor. Now, you need bidders and sellers. For the advertisers, the buyers, the source talks about the demand-side platform, the DSP.
Yes.
What makes that the advertiser's command center, as they put it?
Well, it's where they make all the quick decisions.
Yeah.
The DSP helps them figure out what ad space to buy, is it video, display, mobile, and where to buy it, when is the best time to show the ad, and maybe most importantly, how much they're willing to pay in that auction.
The bidding strategy part.
Exactly. And the source really highlights its role in managing all this across tons of different websites and apps and measuring how it's all doing. Advertisers might even use more than one DSP, actually.
Okay, got it. So the DSP helps the advertiser buy smart. What about the other side? The publisher, the website owner, selling the space. That's the supply-side platform SSP.
Precisely. Yeah, the SST is a publisher's tool. Its main job, according to the source, is helping them manage all that ad space they have on their pages in their apps.
And get the most money for it, presumably.
Right, maximize the revenue they make from each ad shown. So publishers use SSPs to do things like setting minimum bid prices or maybe deciding only certain types of advertisers can bid, that sort of thing.
Okay, so we've got the marketplace, the ad exchange, the buyer's tech, the DSP, and the seller's tech, the SSP. They're all talking to each other.
Constantly, at lightning speed.
The source also mentions Unified ID 2.0, UID2. It calls it an open source framework. What kind of problem is something like UID2 trying to fix here?
It's really tackling identity. How do you recognize a user as they move around the open internet?
You mean like websites, apps, streaming services?
Yep.
Stuff that's often ad-funded?
Exactly, stuff outside the big walled gardens. The source says UID2's goal is basically to offer a standard way to know it's the same user across different sites or apps, which is becoming super important as older ways of doing that, like third-party cookies, are changing.
Right. Makes sense. And the last piece of tech mentioned isn't really tech, it's the LUMAscape. The source calls it a crucial map.
Yeah, think of it like an industry cheat sheet, almost.
Okay.
The LUMAscape charts out all the different companies. In ad tech and marketing tech, it shows who does what. And the source notes, crucially, it shows how they connect, like how a bid request flows from a DSP, maybe through an exchange, to an SSP.
Yeah.
Just helps make sense of a really crowded space.
So it maps the plumbing, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so that's the machinery. The auction house, the buyer's controls, the seller's manager, this identity piece trying to link things up, and a map to see it all. But, and this is a huge but, the source emphasizes none of this works without data. Data is the fuel, the intelligence driving every single decision.
Absolutely. It's not just automation, it's smart automation. And that smartness comes from crunching just massive amounts of data. Should we dig into the types?
Let's do it. The source details several key data types. First on the list, attribution data.
Okay, attribution. This is the data that tries to answer the question, did the ad actually do anything?
Did it work?
Yeah, did it work? The source defines it as data that measures the impact of seeing an ad, by tracking if the user did something afterwards, like did they buy the product? Did they sign up for the newsletter?
So it connects the ad view to an outcome.
Exactly. And its value is huge for advertisers because it helps them compare, which channels are working best, which campaigns are driving results, helps them plan better. The source mentions last touch attribution, giving all the credit to the very last ad someone saw before converting. That's one way to do it.
Okay. Then we get this really fundamental distinction. First-party data versus third-party data. What's the source say about first-party?
First-party data is your own goldmine. It's the information a company collects directly from its own customers or audience.
Like from their website or app?
Yeah, or their CRM system, maybe subscription lists, even data from physical stores. The source says it's super valuable because, well, you collected it yourself, so you generally trust it's accurate. And you own it. You control it.
Right. And how does that compare to third-party data then?
Third party is different. That's data collected by somebody else. Often a company that specializes in gathering data across loads of different websites and apps, places they don't own. Then they package it up and sell access to it.
So advertisers buy this data?
Yeah, they pay to use it, maybe to find new customers who look like their existing ones, or just to understand the market better. The source gives retail data as an example, data based on what people buy, maybe from loyalty cards. That gets bundled and sold to use for targeting elsewhere online.
Okay, data you own versus data you buy. The source also talks about certainty, deterministic data, and probabilistic data. What's deterministic?
Deterministic means you're pretty sure. It's data where you can link activity or identity across different devices or channels with, like, high confidence.
Yeah.
Often this comes from logins.
Like when I log into the same service on my phone and my laptop.
Exactly. The source calls it data that's known to be true. It allows for really accurate tracking of that specific person across their devices.
And probabilistic, that sounds less certain.
It is. It's based on probability, on likelihood. It uses statistical models. Instead of a definite link like a login, it looks at different signals, maybe the IP address, the type of device, the browser, time of day patterns, and makes an educated guess.
A guess that two devices belong to the same person or household.
Right. It's like saying it's highly probable these signals belong to the same user. It's not 100%, but it's essential for reaching people when you don't have that definite deterministic link. It expands your reach based on likelihood.
Gotcha. Now, tying a lot of this together are identifiers. The source lists these as signals.
Yeah, identifiers are crucial. They're like the little tags or labels that connect all these different pieces of data together. The source gives examples we know, like cookies.
Right.
Or mobile ad IDs.
Right.
MAIDs. Device IDs, and also these newer alternative IDs like the UID2 we mentioned, or Rampid is another example.
And these can be tied to different things, a person, a device.
Yeah, some are tied to a browser session, some to a specific device, some aim to represent a person, some even a whole household. And they work across different channels and devices, ideally. That's the goal, anyway.
Let's just quickly define a couple of those common ones the source mentions, but specifically how they fit into this system. Cookies, we all hear about them.
Right. The source reminds us they're just small bits of data stored by your web browser. They help sites remember things about you. But in programmatic, their big role is helping build up a picture of your browsing habits over time.
But not your actual identity.
No, not directly revealing who you are. And the source notes the key difference. First-party cookies set by the site you're visiting, and third-party cookies set by others, like advertisers. That distinction is, well, kind of a big deal right now.
Yeah, definitely. And a device ID.
That's basically the unique serial number for your phone or tablet. Apps you install can often retrieve it. It acts a bit like a cookie, but for the mobile app world, allowing tracking and targeting within and sometimes across different apps.
Okay. The source also brings up hashed IDs and defines PII.
Right, so PII first. That's personally identifiable information, stuff that directly points to you, your name, your email address, phone number, the really sensitive stuff.
And hashing helps protect that.
Exactly. A hashed ID takes that PII, or maybe another identifier, and runs it through a mathematical process, like scrambling it, to create a pseudonymous string of characters.
So it's masked.
Yeah, it obscures the original information. This lets the system use the data for things like matching users across data sets or for targeting, but without passing around your actual name or email in plain text. It's a privacy-enhancing technique.
Okay, moving through the data types. Metadata, what's that?
Metadata is simply data about other data. It's the context.
Like
Information about the ad space itself. What website is it on? What's the content of the page? Or data about the user request. What browser are they using? What time is it? The source points out that as things get more complex, there's more metadata available. And marketers can use these extra signals for smarter targeting or measuring results better.
interesting. The term seed also comes up.
Yeah, seed. The source defines this as like a blueprint of a brand's best customer.
How do they make that blueprint?
Ideally, using their own first-party data. They look at customers who actually bought something or signed up or whatever the key action is, and build a profile representing those really valuable customers.
And then what do they do with this seed profile?
They use it for things like lookalike modeling. They basically tell the system, okay, this seed represents my best customers. Go find me more people out there who look like this.
Got it. Find similar audiences.
Exactly.
And finally, the source gets into targeting data itself, how all this data is used to target ads. It mentions two main types.
Right, the actual methods. First is behavioral targeting. This uses your past online activity, the sites you've visited, things you've searched for, to guess what you might be interested in.
So it shows you ads based on your history.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Targeting based on what you did do.
And the other one is contextual targeting.
Yeah, that's different. It targets based on what you're looking at right now. It matches the ad to the content of the web page or the app screen you're currently viewing.
So if I'm reading an article about hiking.
You might see an ad for hiking boots.
Exactly.
The source notes the ads are picked automatically based on the page content, not based on a long-term profile of you, but the immediate context.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Seeing how all these different bits, the tech and the data actually, work together.
Yeah, this is where the magic or the machinery really happens.
We have the exchanges, DSPs, SSPs, and then all this data. First party, third party, deterministic, probabilistic, identifiers, metadata. How does the source show them interacting?
Okay, so picture this. You visit a website. Instantly, the publisher's SSP gets notified there's an ad space available.
An impression opportunity.
Right. But it's not just, hey, someone loaded the page. Thanks to all those data types and identifiers we talked about, cookies, maybe a hashed ID, maybe linked to a probabilistic profile, plus metadata about the page. The SSP bundles up a rich description of that ad slot and potentially the user seeing it.
And it sends that description out.
It sends it usually to an ad exchange. The exchange then basically shouts this opportunity out to maybe hundreds, even thousands of DSPs.
Who are all listening, representing different advertisers.
Exactly. And each DSP, armed with its advertisers' campaign goals, their budget, maybe their first-party data, seed profiles, behavioral targeting lists, it looks at that incoming request with all its data signal.
And decides if it wants to bid.
Instantly. It calculates, okay, based on everything I know, how much is showing an ad to this user on this page right now worth to my advertiser?
Wow. All in milliseconds.
Milliseconds. They fire back their bids to the exchange. The exchange runs a super fast auction, picks the winner, usually the highest bidder, but the publisher might have rules set in their SSP too.
And the winner's ad gets shown.
The winning ad creative is fetched and displayed on your screen via the SSP, and poof, the ad appears. It all relies on that crazy fast exchange of data, linked by identifiers, processed by the platforms. It's kind of amazing, actually.
So let's bring it back to the listener. What does all this really mean for you when you're just browsing online?
Well, it means that ad you just saw, it probably wasn't just thrown there randomly. It was likely the result of this incredibly complex, data-fueled automated auction. An auction that considered the page you were on, maybe things inferred about your interests from past activity or data profiles, and matched it with an advertiser trying to reach someone potentially like you right at that moment.
So understanding these moving parts, the tech, the data, it gives you a bit of insight into this whole system that's constantly running behind the scenes, shaping what you see.
Yeah, it helps demystify it a bit. You see how they're trying, at least, to make the ads relevant using all these signals as you move around the open internet.
Okay, so recapping. The source really lays out the core tech, the ad exchange acting as the marketplace, DSPs for the buyers, SSPs for the sellers.
Right, and then the whole universe of data types, first party, third party, deterministic, probabilistic, metadata, and crucially, the identifiers like cookies and device IDs that try to stitch it all together.
It paints a pretty clear picture of the mechanics, doesn't it? How this automated buying and selling works at scale, powered by data.
Definitely. It shows an ecosystem built for efficiency and intelligence, using data to connect advertisers with audiences.
Which naturally leads to a pretty big question, especially right now. Given how much this whole system, as described, fundamentally depends on these specific data types and identifiers, especially things like third-party cookies and mobile IDs to connect the dots across the open internet, what happens next?
You mean with all the changes happening, privacy regulations, browser restrictions?
Exactly. How might these shifts in, what data is available or how identifiers work, how might that fundamentally change this entire ecosystem we've just described?
And consequently, how you experience websites, apps, streaming,
Yeah.
how you see ads online in the future.
Yeah. If the plumbing changes, what does the house look like?
That's definitely something to think about as you navigate the web.